After the verbal lashing I gave Unity in the last episode, my critics have accused me of many things. Lies, treachery, defamation, slander. Someone said I am a pure carcinogen slowly destroying the Assassin's Creed fandom from the inside. Alright, none of that's true. This intro was actually written before the Unity video was uploaded to keep the slower process of creating this video series as streamlined as possible. If anyone could go back and trash talk me in that video's comments to make my intro true, I'll owe you one. In truth, Unity wasn't so bad that things couldn't get worse. And thankfully they did not get worse. Mostly. For the main games. Some other stuff was a bit of a mixed bag. We'll get there. This is a briefish history of Assassin's Creed. After the PR nightmare that was so much of Unity's early days, Ubisoft actually manifested just enough self-awareness to realize they should do something to course-correct it. They announced the premium story DLC would be free for everyone, and I actually respect that decision. Ubisoft, giving up the chance for more profit? Next you'll tell me they're ready to respect women. Ha ha! Alright, let's not get outlandish. Those who had paid for the season pass already were given their choice of some older UB games, which made some people unhappy. But I feel like that's a good lesson. Pay for content that isn't out yet at your own risk. Tread carefully, lest ye be punked. Anyway, Assassin's Creed Unity, Dead Kings, ends up being one of the more substantial free DLCs I've personally experienced, and honestly, it would have still been pretty solid if it had cost a few bucks. What it is a new story campaign roughly comparable to entries like the Da Vinci Disappearance and Freedom Cry. Dead Kings is pretty detailed. It introduces a new city, Franciade, also known as Saint-Denis, which in many ways is the main character here. It's quite atmospheric. Imagine the rundown, war-torn streets of Paris, but make them more gloomy and you'll be on the right track. The streets are only half the story though, because the true centerpiece is the Basilica Cathedral and its sprawling underground royal necropolis of said dead kings. This is the part that really impresses me. I am usually very navigationally challenged. Ask literally any friend I had to try and navigate in high school before I had a smartphone, and they will tell you a story of me not being able to give them the most basic fucking directions. In the car with them. Going to destinations like my own goddamn house. I have had to stop playing video games, plural, because I got irreconcilably lost in them. However, full props to Ubisoft Montpellier who led development, because I didn't get lost in these deep, dark, twisting underground tunnels. Ever. This campaign is back and forth, overworld, underworld, throughout. And I was fine without it having to compromise the feeling that murky catacombs are unfamiliar and hostile places. DK also introduces a handful of new gameplay elements. The least subtle of these is the guillotine gun, a new class of weapon which is one part battle axe and one part grenade launcher. The grenade launcher part functions a lot like Shays in Rogue, although it lacks any variety of grenade other than explodey murder. The axe part functions like an axe. You hit someone with it and then they die. I don't see what the confusion is about. Sadly, the guillotine gun is more flash than substance and limits itself in weird ways that keep me from recommending it long term. It takes up the firearm slot in your inventory, so you can't have a pistol as backup, but then it only allows you to carry 2 additional grenades. Unlike every other type of ammo pouch in the game, you cannot upgrade this capacity. Of course, it's a literal bomb. Certainly a couple explosives can still hold their own, right? I'm uncomfortably close, because the answer is, no. You hit a group with this thing, and then the creed points that pop up whenever you do anything in Unity, congratulate your super mega group annihilation slaughter kill, and then the smoke clears and a bunch of dudes just get back up. Like, sure, some guys die, but the main enemy faction in the plot are a bunch of amateur Tomb Raiders primarily armored in body hair. They should be a wet pile of meat jelly with some teeth on top as a garnish after that. The next gameplay mechanic, also involving the Raiders, brings back cowardice. Sometimes in some of the earlier games, guards would actually get scared at the sight of a lone man turning an entire platoon into a bunch of fish food and would cower or flee. But it was mostly random. Here it's a strategic option. Since these dudes lack proper training, if they see their leader go down, they too will surrender or GTFO. Finally, the lantern. It is used for visibility and clearing swarms of nasty, creepy crawlies and bats. But it has limited fuel, and the oil will be ruined if you end up in the water. Otherwise, Deceased Monarchs provides a few new side missions, costumes to unlock, some of which are ugly, and even some new co-op missions, so you get your money's worth. Your free money's worth. Wait, that accidentally sounded a little demeaning. I'm trying to be nice to Unity in this episode. Story time. Taking place a week after...
Elise! 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 Elise!
Arno is in a rough place, yet again. I won't hold that against him this time, because it is mean to mock someone in mourning. I will make an exception when the deceased is unethical enough, though. Arno is going to Franciade to meet up with... God damn it, he's going to meet up with his favorite sex criminal, the Marquis de Sade. Don't worry, they gave him a new top hat, so you know that he's flourishing in their version of history. He wants a manuscript currently hidden in a royal corpse receptacle, and in exchange, Arno gets a ticket to Cairo, Egypt, to leave the whole France thing behind, once and for all. As they're discussing plot whatevers, this fugly boy warns them about Ghost Kings being spotted. Arno proceeds to reasonably ignore him. The manuscript has been relocated during all the looting in tandem with the fall of the royalty, and Arno discovers the leader of the raiders, Capitan Rose, is trying to find a precursor temple somewhere deep in the tunnels. Following the breadcrumbs, he learns that someone named Leon has re-raided the manuscript, purportedly killing 2 of the raiders.
Leon, I hear he killed 2 of our men.
I only point that detail out because it turns out Leon is like 10 or something. Considering their track record of weird kid ages in previous games, it was probably smart they didn't give a concrete age. But it's kind of wild that they casually alleged he performed a prepubescent double homicide without ever elaborating on that point. Arno discovers that Rose has been hired on by Napoleon to find the temple, because Napoleon got his hands on a precursor key back when Arno was paying no fucking attention during the main story. Arno has to save Leon from getting killed by Rose's men, and in response, Leon brings Arno to a guillotine gun, which he hid behind a couple of corpses. Wait, 2 bodies? Could these be Leon's victims? What did he do to them? Jesus fucking Christ! Arno also ends up witnessing a conversation between Napoleon and one of his military underlings, where Napoleon basically says that it's totally chill to use evil dudes like Rose for your own personal end goals, bruh. Most protagonists would take this as a direct sign they should not be allied with this person anymore. But this is Arno we're talking about, and he'll absolutely keep working with Napoleon later on. What a great character you've made, Ubisoft. Leon wants Arno to stop Rose from getting into the Precursor Temple, thereby saving France, but Arno tells Leon to fuck off, orphan boy, your parents are dead.
They're never coming back.
He has a post-bereavement hallucinatory experience where he projects Elise onto a complete stranger and tackles her in the street, which convinces him to stop being a dick to orphans, and he goes back to resume the plot just as promptly as he tried to leave it. They MacGuffin up the relevant MacGuffins, which are some sort of glowing precursor plates, and get to the door to the temple. He has to turn off the security since it keeps lasering lockpickers to death, and Rose shoots a dude who doesn't want to get lasered to death to remind you that he's a dick, in case you forgot after he tried to have a child murderized. Turns out the Ghost Kings the Fugly Man and random NPCs keep commenting on are just spooky precursor holograms. Arno then nabs the MacGuffin key and opens the vault, just in time for Rose to shoot his lantern, maybe? I don't know, he shoots something, and so Arno drops his lantern and falls in a hole. It's unclear. Either way, Leon has to throw Arno a new lantern for some puzzle platforming, so the bad guys have enough time to set up around the precursor site. That's how these things work, after all. Unsurprisingly, Arno is able to get through the hirsute amateurs and kills Rose in battle. I actually like this Eagle Vision more than the ones from the main game, because instead of just railroading the plot forward, this one actually reveals interesting new information. Sure am glad they used this concept well, once. A mysterious, unknown man tells Rose that his people will pay much more than Napoleon will for the artifact. All he has to do is deliver it to someone called Lady Eve. The series never gives a further explanation, so I get to speculate. It's probably just Templars. A later game creates a fun possible alternative I've seen speculation on, but that's a spoiler, so I won't even name which game just yet. Either you already know and get to be part of the Cool Kids Who Know club, or you just have to wallow in your ignorance until we get there. Get fucked, fuckers. This artifact is the Head of Saint Denis, and it is a creepy-ass face lantern which acts very similarly to Ezio and Desmond using the Apple of Eden to mindfuck their enemies. This one, however, does some Batman Begins shit and summons down bats too. So the last thing these poor sods experience before their brains melt is getting slapped in the face by dozens of flying mammals at a time. Arno coyly slips to Sod the manuscript and contemplates the head he just got. Unsurprisingly, it's just an Apple of Eden in there. Arno sends it off to the assassin leader in Cairo, Al-Mualim, not the dead one from 603 years earlier in case you were confused, but decides he will stay in France after all. Napoleon gets arrested for treason and deserting his post, and Leon continues being an orphan. The end. Let's take a closer look at this ending, though. It's not a bad ending or anything, but it is fascinating because of what it doesn't show. To start, the manuscript in question is kind of a big deal. Sketch for a historical picture of the progress of the human mind, because titles used to be hella long, is the key influence on French Enlightenment thought, sharing some philosophies about improving the world through information and understanding, which even line up with Ass Creed precedent, but it just gets relegated to a few lines quoted over the ending cutscene as an artistic flair. There's not really an indication of the massive significance here, and our three central characters here also have so much this ending just cuts off that change the entire takeaway. Not counting Leon in this, because having dead parents is fairly immutable. That part is not changing anytime soon. Let's start with Arno. He is going to get reinducted back into the Assassins and rise to the rank of Master Assassin entirely off-screen. Sure, I'm sure securing this apple helped expedite that, but it's wild that they don't make any reference to that. Marquis Mark here is an even more dramatic example. They worked overtime to give Desaad this implicit happy ending, which is weird to do for a sex criminal, especially considering real life most certainly did not. IRL, he was very destitute at this point. He had just gotten out of prison again following the Reign of Terror, and within a few years, he would be arrested again, where he would spend the rest of his life bouncing between prison and asylums. During those last few years, he had ongoing carnal knowledge with a 14-year-old until he finally bit it. Then, post-death, the instructions for his burial in his will were deliberately ignored. His son would destroy his remaining unpublished manuscripts, and his skull would later get dug up by phrenologists so they could study racist brain pseudoscience. And you know who had him arrested? Character number 3, Napoleon Bonaparte. It is accurate that Napoleon got arrested at this time over possible connections to Robespierre, who you may remember had just taken it in the face very recently. However, it's pretty misleading to show this as part of the ending. Napoleon only spent a few weeks under house arrest before being acquitted, where he went right back to military service. One successful military campaign was in Egypt, where Arno just sent the apple. Napoleon got a hold of it and used its power to become Emperor of France, as shown way back in Assassin's Creed 2's lore. Remember, despite his unethical leadership and the fact that he certainly got Egyptian assassins killed to get his hands on the apple, Arno keeps working with this man. The ending of the base game shows Master Assassin Arno revealing Germain's bones to him. He shares significant secrets with one of history's most notorious tyrants. Further, just to drive this point to its full, baffling extent, I kept details from the base game in my pocket to specifically discuss right here. One co-op mission set after his Egyptian campaign, but before his emperoring, Arno and the assassins protect a will-be dictator who took direct action against the Brotherhood in Egypt literally 2 years prior from getting assassinated by the Royalists, whom Unity typically sides with otherwise. So, Unity ends the way it begins, with me needing pushpins and red yarn to even begin to understand what the fuck it is trying to say. If you've watched all, holy hell, 467 minutes of my previous Ask Creed episodes, you may have caught that one of the things I detest most in this series is spin-off game Altair's Chronicles. With that in mind, we have new spin-off games with Chronicles right there in the title. Let's see how this goes. Assassin's Creed Chronicles are 3 semi-connected spin-off games on consoles and Vita that use a side-scrolling perspective and relegates their identities to the entire nation each is set in: China, India, Russia. Now, these were released episodically, so the latter 2 wouldn't be released until during Syndicate's limelight, but I have little interest spreading these out. It will be much more cohesive doing them all at once. It's probably not worth mentioning, considering all I'm about to have to deal with, but the titles are so lazy. China, India, and Russia are massive places with massive history. Nothing here could possibly encompass the entirety of their nations. You didn't call it Assassin's Creed United States of America, even though America has comparatively much less history, and it's weird to do that just because you gave less of a shit about the countries represented, Ubisoft. Gameplay is presented mostly in 2D, with paths that take you forward or backwards to a different plane, in order to give some depth to the world. Each one is styled like art contemporary to the setting, and they are visually striking, as you can already tell. China and India are gorgeous, and while Russia obviously goes for a colder, harsher look, it still helps get a point across. All 3 characters also return from various tie-in media. China stars Xiao Jun from Assassin's Creed Embers, and India and Russia pull in comics characters Arbaz Mir from Assassin's Creed Brahmin, and Nikolai Orlov from Assassin's Creed The Fall and Assassin's Creed The Chain. These games have a much stricter focus on stealth. There is a combat system, we'll get to it, but these clearly want you creeping. There are 3 categories it ranks you on, depending on how successfully stealthy and how stabby you are, and progression for things like better ammo capacity and more health is tied to your score and performing optional requirements during the levels. I won't get into the nitty-gritty until I lay some cards on the table. Part of me wants and has always wanted to love these games for their unique sense of style and for trying something different for the series, but I'm not really able to. I respect them more now, and even think they're pretty okay nowadays, but I used to really dislike these games. These games require a galactic shit ton of patience just to get through. They are by and large far too unforgiving. They feel downright judgmental if you aren't playing perfectly. And while they don't always penalize you immediately for the tiniest of errors, they do it in a way that you're frequently better off just restarting the checkpoint than trying to deal with the cock-up fallout that ensues. As the games progress, they demand such precise timing within a deceptively complex control scheme and so many intensely layered gameplay elements that you will find yourself sent back to start over again and again and again and again. One particularly bad instance in the early portions of India took me 25 attempts because of its hyper-complexity combined with factors beyond my control. Halfway in, the double assassination move my strategy needed in multiple places just started bugging out and wouldn't register, so I had to go for even slower and riskier ways to take out clustered groups. Then, one death happened because the assassination animation the game selected at random launched a guard's corpse into an explosive, blowing us both up, when that had been a safe distance to assassinate him at during previous attempts. All of this was just to get through the segment. The game would have preferred I also get through that section completely non-lethally, without even a single knockout, and also never once being seen, because that is required for the best score. And while I'm sure that is technically possible, the game can truly go get fucked in a porcupine orgy. It's fine for a game to be hard, and it's even fine for a game to demand that you just learn the mechanics well. Bloodborne is my second favorite game on PS4, so I can handle a game just being challenging. But games like this have to be able to hold up their end of the fucking bargain and function consistently. This kind of design is already going to turn off a lot of gamers who aren't looking to be perfectionist, and performance like this is going to turn off plenty of the remaining minority of gamers who are willing to stick around even when a game is absolutely brutalizing their naughty cheeks. Let's get into these deceptively deep mechanics. Controls actually have similarities to what we've seen in the main series recently. Right trigger for faster, high-profile movement, left trigger is crouching, and you can combine the two. You can do fast crouch movement by holding sprint and then high profile, or do a slide by sprinting and then holding crouch. Aiming gadgets is on the left shoulder, and using said gadgets is right shoulder. Eagle vision is clicking the right stick. Interacting with objects is a little weird because sometimes it is holding this button and sometimes holding up on the left stick. Movement does feel pretty natural, and it's pretty easy to see where you can go at a moment's notice. Parkourable surfaces are marked with red and hiding spots with green, which you also press up to enter. Frequently, the left-right dynamic changes up with obvious paths to a different plane or going around corners, but even then, navigation remains easy to figure out. Combat gives you a light attack, heavy attack, and a button for dodging and blocking. Tap with the right timing to avoid ranged attacks, hold the button, and hold the left stick in the direction of your aggressor to block the attack. Then, while still holding your block, you can also do things like rolling over the enemy and counter attacks. I recommend doing the combat as little as possible. Even if you don't care about the score systems, it's really only designed to suffice. Early on, you die in a very small number of hits. There are so many enemy types with so many degrees of immunity to various combat moves and frequently areas are reinforcement zones, where enemies will keep spawning if you're seen. It's definitely intentional that combat is so limited here, though it does sadly make these characters feel much less capable than the main game's assassins. Now, stealth is where the games get complex, real fast. It feels like these games keep piling on new mechanics to account for every time you enter a new fucking room. The basics are that enemies either have vision cones, which take a brief few moments to fully spot you, or entire awareness bubbles where you are spotted immediately. Occasionally both. It's not bad at first, except sometimes it gets ridiculous, with so many moving indicators and zones that it becomes very unclear what the hell you're supposed to do. It reminds me of the time I covered shitty App Store games that clearly want to be Assassin's Creed, and then this monstrosity of vision cones happened. Most mechanics from there all operate on the various ways you can have your cover blown, and a lot of times the differences are subtle. Guard dogs, or the far more badass guard tigers, bark and roar if you get within range of their cage. Noisy floors give you away if you don't crouch. Birds start chirping if you run by them. Chimes have to be crouched under and are sometimes just rigged up to chimes elsewhere too. Some enemies or spotlights can light up certain hiding spots. Plant-based hiding spots only conceal you when you aren't moving. I could keep going, but it would honestly just get boring. Everything is at least pretty natural to understand as they roll out, and I'm placing my confidence in you, dear viewer, that you can probably even figure out what's happening in random footage just from context clues. I'm apparently the exact kind of lazy who will put together 40+ minute videos on the reg, but then just craps out halfway into a list. One more of these I am willing to discuss further is the mechanic of enemies talking, because it gets obnoxious very fast. Not in gameplay terms. If two dudes are chatting, they pay much less attention to the world around themselves, and you can get away with slightly more around them. These are obnoxious because you almost always have to listen to the same short, looping conversation over and over again. You are outright blessed on the occasions where an area actually has two unique conversations amongst all of the guards, because sometimes the same conversation is the only thing any guards are saying anywhere at any point in each story. Apparently, every single motherfucker in Russia is from Omsk, a long way from here. Russians, please confirm for me if that is true in the comment section below. The games do sometimes mix up the pacing with fast-paced levels that don't give a fuck about how lethal you get so long as you do things quickly. China mostly justifies these as the Templars just set the whole area on fire, but the other two make slightly more effort to mix things up. While these do also start to get demanding to the point of being ridiculously punishing by the end of the trilogy, they are very welcome and were typically my favorite part of each game. Also, you cannot tell me that murderizing someone mid-slide isn't the coolest way to murderize someone. I will not listen to your lies. India and Russia also add in sniping sections due to existing in times where firearms are modern enough to do such a thing. These are also pretty fun, and only sometimes get frustratingly demanding. There will be side missions and collectibles scattered throughout the levels, but are revealed on the map when you sink at a viewpoint. That is the most disappointing thing I have ever seen. Why did they make the viewpoints boring? Chests containing scrolls unlock database lore for you, and otherwise it's just Animus data fragments again. I've made it clear in the past that collectibles are boring when the historical character would have no reason to go over there to pick up something for the modern day characters, which, in this case, barely get acknowledged by the game. It's doubly worse when these are in hazardous areas that are otherwise best avoided. Triply worse in one case where the game mechanics cheat to make your life harder. Right here, the game physically will not allow you to grab this middle ledge until you've gone around the long way and need a new place to jump when the collectibles ledge collapses. Sometimes these collectibles appear to be placed in a way to make the stealth challenge especially tricky, but their demands for perfectionism fall apart in these instances. Since collectibles remain collected the moment you have them, you can cheese these by running over, grabbing them, and restarting the checkpoint when everything goes to shit. Each character has 4 tools available on the D-pad, as well as rope darts limited to situational uses, such as grappling up to climbable ceilings. All 3 have whistling, which you can volume control for precision. Don't ask how Nikolai can whistle louder than a moving train. Just don't do it. June additionally has throwing knives, used to cut ropes for environmental puzzles. These won't kill dudes. Unless there is a New Game Plus upgrade I was unwilling to replay the game to see. She also has noise darts to create distractions, and firecrackers, which are not used as a distraction here like they are in their other appearances. She throws them at the skulls of her foes to stun them. That's fair, that would stun me too. Our Baz keeps the noise darts, switches the throwing knives for Chakram, which function the same way but can also ricochet a few times, and I guarantee they have a New Game Plus lethal upgrade because it dangled that carrot in front of me at the end of the game before I promptly did not replay the game to see. Instead of the firecrackers, he uses a smoke bomb. Nikolai keeps the smoke bomb and changes out the other 2 pretty dramatically. His main ranged tool is his rifle, which is lethal on headshot from the get-go and creates distractions like the noise dart. His other tool is a powered electric winch, which can pull down grates and platforms just like the Batclaw in the Arkham games, and can also send out electric pulses to disable junction boxes or perform environmental knockouts. Finally, there are Helix abilities. I don't love these because these are borderline canon breaking and so internally inconsistent within these games that I now have to try and figure out a way to explain things, since that's my goddamn job in this video series. Remember how Helix is the current version of the Animus as of Unity? Well, Helix abilities appear to be Animus hacks that allow invisibility and undetectable dashing and instant kills and body dissolving, so long as you have an energy meter filled. I don't like abilities in these games that are purely an Animus thing. If the historical character couldn't do a thing, it should not be in the game that way. However, these only appear to be that way at first. Eagle-visioned viewers may have noticed my footage is entirely from China and India at the moment. That's because all of Russia's footage involves massive spoilers, which makes these abilities canon to the historical characters. They're directly commented on in-universe. I'll elaborate more when we get there, but it seems to be that these only appear to be Helix hacks because the Animus itself cannot quite decipher what is actually happening. One last point before story time is just that China ends up feeling a bit disparate from the other 2. It's very distant in time, being more than 300 years separated from India, whereas India is only about 70 years before Russia, and China completely lacks non-lethal chokeholds or the ability to pickpocket or loot guards. Even the scoring system is just a bit different. Its tiers are Shadow, Assassin, Brawler, whereas the other 2 are Shadow, Assassin, Silencer, just to make things complicated. Now, before we can delve into the individual plots, we have to talk about a box. Not that box, that one still has no canon explanation. That's the one. This box is much more complicated than I have let on. It's actually one of the messier particulars in Ass Creed. I first discussed it with Freedom Cry, but it actually popped up before then. Sort of. There's some conflict around this box because different Ass Creed creators keep declaring different details to be canon about this box. Essentially, there's uncertainty as to whether there's 1 or 2 precursor boxes pinballing around modern-ish history. Further, even appearances where the box is stated to be the same one have different styles of lid. I'm going to ignore that. This is sci-fi, it can alter its lid as a treat. I'm going to treat this as one box, because A, the timeline works out just fine for it to be the same box, B, these games get heavily invalidated right at the end if you assume it's not the same box, and C, that's the argument coming from the head of Assassin's Creed content, who is slightly more in charge of things than the head writer of Rogue, who believes it should be 2 boxes, and his box gets to be its own little special snowflake and not a massive slut like that other box. So the actual first appearance of the Precursor Box goes all the way back to Embers. Old man Ezio gives Xiao Jun a box and advises her to only open it if she gets lost, basically. It's a fairly minor, insignificant moment, so much so I outright forgot it was the Precursor Box back when I covered Embers. Whoopsie. Also, she never once gets to use it for such a purpose, so fuck that plot thread, I guess. Chinese story time. China begins with June returning, you guessed it, to China following her time training with Ezio. If you don't remember Embers, the other Chinese assassins have been wiped out by the Templars in charge of the Imperial Court, other than her one remaining ally, Wang Yangming. These Templars are a historical group of eunuchs, the 8 Tigers. If you're not familiar with the concept of eunuchs, typically that refers to when a dude would be castrated for various, often political, jobs. They'd chop his balls off for employment. Shoney's famously still does the same thing. Don't worry though, Chinese eunuchs are a bit different. In China, they'd chop off the cock and also the balls. The Templars in this game collectively have the same number of penises as Xiao Jun, and that number is 0. The point is, because she's going after the 8 tigers, she sort of gets her own hunt for the 9 like Altair did. Except there are obviously only 8, so it's the hunt for the 8. Except, the tigers initially killed one dude for not being a Templar. Still, hunt for the 7! No, wait, actually Yang Ming kills another one off screen. 6 though, we at least get the hunt for the... Fucking Christ, one of them simply died of old age, also off screen. Hunt for the 5. So fucking anticlimactic. So June takes a risky gamble and gets captured with the box because it will allow her to get close enough to the first tiger, Gao Feng, and she knows that if she is captured without the box, they will just kill her immediately. I'm not exactly sure why she couldn't come up with a plan that doesn't involve getting captured in the first place. The first 2 levels involve Templar prisons that just keep accidentally letting prisoners out. So I feel like sneaking in isn't out of the question. She is able to kill Feng, but only after the Templars have taken the box elsewhere. Midway through that, she flashes back to Ezio, training her how to fight.
Attack this enemy. Show me how you strike with your sword.
Christ, that Ezio impression is even worse than the guy who played him on the DS.
My thirst for vengeance is strong.
Sorry I ever doubted you. Weirdly, this is how China is going to introduce several skills throughout, but since these are flashbacks, shouldn't she already be able to do these things from the beginning? Also weirdly, if you fail at the tutorials a few times, Ezio just fucking gives up and ends the lesson.
Perhaps the heat of battle will sharpen your wits. The lesson ends here.
This game is such a fucking perfectionist. It gets mad when you are still figuring things out during the tutorial. You're not my real Ezio. Reunited with Yang Ming, she goes after the slaver Yu Daiyong next, and the other Templars retaliate by burning down the entire shipyard. June escapes, obviously, and the game presents what it wants its central theme to be. Something. Desiring revenge too much is bad. Something. I know it wants this theme because throughout she keeps saying this same thing to herself. However, you see, the problem is hunting the Templars because they have to be taken out to break their hold, a la every game in this series, and hunting the Templars out of vengeful wishing are virtually indistinguishable here. June's methods, tactics, plans, none of that changes regardless of either intention. She still sneaks in and stabs an MFer on her shoe knife either way. Like, the Templars wouldn't find a dead slaver and say, well, she was being pragmatic yet not vengeful, don't burn down the shipyard. They were gonna do that either way. And if June hadn't acted, there would just be a slaver doing slaving some more. I genuinely don't know where they were coming from on this. She takes out her next target, but he reveals that he was bait while they hunt down Yang Ming. And gosh darn it, they take out Yang Ming.
What good is it to take revenge if I keep losing those I care for?
You stop them from murdering more people? I don't see how this is complicated. With no one else she can trust, June goes to meet the Empress in the Forbidden City, who was previously a fellow concubine back before June escaped and joined the Assassins. Except, when she gets there, the Empress already got coerced into betraying her, and the Templars just jump out like the world's worst surprise party. As June fights the fire-starting Templar from before, a fire accidentally starts. He is a one-trick pony. And yet again, June has to run away from an inferno. With his allies dead and so much paperwork piling up per his fire insurance claims, the tiger leader Zhang Yong decides he's just going to open up the Great Wall and let the Mongolians take over. She shuts that plan down, pissing off the Mongolian army, leading to a full-scale assault and, you guessed it, fire parkour. Zhang Yong ends up filleting her sword, and Xiao Jun tries to monologue about not being revengey to prevent there was a thematic character arc here, but considering he's rapidly losing oxygen to the brain, I doubt he absorbed much of that. The end. Except for a post-credits scene. We cut ahead several years to Elder June and her rebuilt brotherhood, who have just assassinated the Emperor in the funniest way possible. They gave him poison, but told him it was the elixir of life, and he just drank it! Xiao Jun never got the box back, but the whole ordeal taught her an important lesson.
She who seeks revenge should remember to dig 2 graves.
Actually, you needed like a whole bunch more graves than that. And then none of them were yours, so I don't think any of this lesson actually lands, China. Indian storytime. Criminally underrated protagonist Arbaz Mir is sneaking into a palace to impale some royalty. In a sex way. He's fucking the Princess Pyara. Honestly, these two have the cutest little scene together. They have great chemistry. After he nuts in her, they talk about how she's learned from him to keep a blade concealed on her person at all times, and about that crazy MacGuffin piece of Eden from the comics in the assassin's possession, the Koh-i-Noor diamond, which the Templars certainly want for all of those insane things it can do, and it's certainly not just going to get relegated to being a glorified battery in this game, right? Right? So when he gets back, the Templars have taken his mentor Hamid and the Koh-i-Noor diamond to use as a glorified battery inside of a precursor temple. Arbaz naturally saves him, and the goddamn awful gauntlet I talked about earlier happens outside the entrance to the site. What I didn't mention is that once you do all of the things to actually get the door open, success in the next checkpoint is entirely random. The Templars have set up one of those OP fictionalized puckle guns like Shay used in Rogue, and victory depends entirely on whether or not the bullets hit you with sniper precision unexpectedly on your route inside. Neato. This entire bit with the temple is actually very respectful to the established canon. The appearance and defenses appear straight out of those in Black Flag and Rogue, and true to form, the box pops up with the right components in place to use it. In this case, it's the Koh-i-Noor instead of a lightning strike powering it, and it's pulling data straight from the precursor site instead of a manuscript filled with precursor data, and I'm just pleased they got it right. So the bad guy, Sleeman, gets the location of another site in Afghanistan, and Arbaz strolls right up to him to politely ask for the MacGuffins back. Normally I dislike this kind of carelessness, but Arbaz is the exact kind of cheeky that's quite charming, and I just cherish him so much, you guys. So Sleeman tries and fails to shoot him, and that one shot somehow brings down the entire temple.
What on earth did you do?
Arbaz follows the Templars to Afghanistan. That's right, India does not take place entirely in India. Perhaps these games should have had better names. Where he spends a little time fucking up British colonialism, just a little bit, before going into the second precursor temple of the game. Arbaz's master plan is to get ahead of the Templars as they're also ascending, so he can be next to the platform where they set up the box for hologrammy stuff, I guess? I'm not exactly sure what the writers were going for here, because he's just like, aha! Next to an empty pedestal. Did they forget to put in some sort of prize? I can easily add in something.
That's what they were looking for.
Then the Templar forces immediately capture him at gunpoint. It's sloppy. They take him to Katasraj Temple in Pakistan, so that's 2 countries that aren't India, under supervision of a Templar named Alexander Burns. The game implies there's a reason Sleeman kept him alive, but it's never explained. Burns is surprisingly polite and affable to Arbaz, and Arbaz uproots a heavy wooden column to headbutt him and discreetly steals a dagger off of him. I don't know how he did either thing, but that is straight badass. Unfortunately, the game next presents what is possibly the sloppiest storytelling in the Ass Creed franchise. He spots a distinct pavilion, heavily guarded, where the Templars have the Koh-i-Noor and the box. He snipes a bunch of dudes on the tower to the left of the pavilion, climbs up, and then he has to snipe a bunch more dudes to stop them from using mortars to shell the tower. Then, the next cutscene shows the tower getting shelled to hell anyway. That's not even the part that bothers me. Later, he just has the box and the diamond, which it never showed him doing. He has to run away from the location, from the disaster he averted, but then it happened anyway, and it just implies somewhere in there that he zipped down to do the crucial part completely off screen. Ever heard of show, don't tell? Because this game randomly decided to neither show nor tell. The commotion riles up a bunch of mount elephants into stampeding through the courtyards where the British Army tosses all of their gunpowder helter-skelter, and Burns challenges Arbaz to a one-on-one fight where he says he can go free if he wins. And Burns is being genuine. He politely lets Arbaz leave when you win the boss fight. I honestly like how the game presents this dude. It sure would be a shame if he historically got beaten and hacked to death by an angry mob of people on the night of November 2nd, 1841 at the age of 36. So India finally returns to India just in time for the climax, where Sleeman has taken the princess hostage. Guys, I'm kind of tired of taking hostages. Like, I'm tired of the trope. I'm not saying I've been taking people hostage, that's just silly. Stop calling the cops. It so often feels like such a cheap method for hack writers to keep the stakes high and ruin the ending of Dead Space 3. You have stasis, you could freeze both of them and take his gun while he's frozen, Carver. To India's credit though, it actually does this so Piara is able to shank a bitch, and that's a gangsta. They're not able to secure the box back, but they escape with the Koh-i-Noor, and so things sort of end roughly the same way they began. The end. Except for a post-credits scene. In it, Arbaz entrusts the Koh-i-Noor to... Ethan. I know what you're thinking. Who the fuck is Ethan? That was my response the first time, too. Ethan is the father of the Fry twins in Syndicate, and we will never see him in the games at all, following the back of his head right here. Cool. Russian story time. This one actually requires quite a bit of context from the comics, so I'll give you the quick version. Nikolai was in the Brotherhood following his father's footsteps, but also has ties to the Russian Revolution, who operate independently of the Assassins and the Templars. The Bolsheviks in Ass Creed history are literally just the Bolsheviks, no conspiracy. Due to suffering an absolute trauma conga line of mission failures as well as suffering personal loss, Nikolai has decided to abandon the comparatively dogmatic Russian Brotherhood with his family and start a new life in America. One such failure involved the time he tried to reclaim a Staff of Eden from the Templars, but Nikola Tesla, who was not an assassin, used his tech remotely to explode the research site holding the staff to get revenge on Thomas Edison, who was a Templar. The resulting destruction of the Peace of Eden caused the Tunguska event, but a small sliver survived. Though Tsar Alexander III was a Templar, his son, Tsar Nicholas II, is not, as the Templars instead elected to have Rasputin manipulate and control them with the remaining sliver of the Staff of Eden. Of course, Rasputin famously got murked, so when Nikolai found all of this out, he elected to spare the Tsar despite his BFF Lenin asking him to kill him pretty please, and Nikolai would secure the sliver from Rasputin's corpse. So that's where we start. Nikolai is secretly taking one last mission for the Assassins before they book it out of Russia. The Tsar's family has been relocated by the Bolsheviks, but an assassin source discovers that they have the Precursor Box in their possession, and the Templars are certainly moving in on it too. Note the typography here and here, because when he gets there, what was previously being used as the letter U is now a V with a new letter U. This bothered me. So the Templars have already infiltrated the Bolshevik ranks searching for the box, and have started torturing and killing the Tsar's family for information. At first, Nikolai doesn't plan to intervene, though he is aghast. But when he realizes the remaining survivor, 17-year-old Anastasia, is in danger, he steps in and saves her. She has the box, and as Nikolai tries to calm her, his shard contacts the box, which imprints Xiao Jun's memories and skills upon her via the bleeding effect. But Xiao Jun's personality risks taking over if she loses control of it. That's right, in Assassin's Creed alt history, Grand Duchess Anastasia Nikolaevna survived partially due to getting accidentally sci-fi possessed by a Chinese woman from 400 years ago. I fucking love it when the series gets weird. So from here, Anastasia gets to be a surprise playable character, and the game switches back and forth between her and Nikolai as they escape together. She is more limited in abilities, as she has no equipment other than a rope dart she fashions from Nikolai's dagger and some rope, and is limited to stealth. She is also why we have to assume the Helix abilities are canon. She does inherit Jun's Helix abilities, and directly comments on them.
Unbelievable. It's like I'm invisible.
Oh boy, that is tricky to reconcile. I'm going to jump both very forward in time to more recent stuff, as well as backwards to stuff I also had to theorize on. Pieces of Eden sort of keep getting stronger depictions as the series went on. Not just holograms, mind control, or minor levitation anymore, we start to get force fields, and short-range teleportation, and energy attacks, and that sort of thing. In fact, later on, in Odyssey, quite a large number of Cassandra's abilities are directly tied to the fact that she has a Spear of Eden in her possession. Basically, letting her do a shit ton of crazy stuff because it was, at some point, straight up weaponry likely used in the civil war between humanity and the ones who came before. Everything we see the Helix abilities do fits within capabilities we see other Precursor tech allow. In most of those cases, someone is actually possessing distinctly offensive or defensive tech though, but all we have here is the box, which is first and foremost a data cache. It can reasonably transmit memories in the vein of memory seals, since that's a reasonable form of data for it to store, and again in Odyssey we'll see that as a fairly standard feature in even other random pieces of Eden too. But to explain how the box could maybe pass on powers, I'm going to have to look back at Tyranny of King Washington. You'll have to check out that full video for the nitty-gritty, but that story wasn't just a vision, but implicitly an entirely possible alternate timeline the Precursors ended up not choosing while setting up the future that would allow Desmond to save humanity from extinction. In that timeline, Connor's tribe guards a tree whose bark can be consumed to imbue themselves with techno-powers without otherwise possessing a piece of Eden, so there's some degree of micro or even nanotech going on, as seen by Rasputin's sliver of the staff still possessing the means to compel human minds and the power to activate the box, further backing that point. Now, maybe the box's wood is imbued like the tree bark, or maybe it just has a little compartment somewhere, but either way, it had ample opportunity to pass the Helix skills on to June on her travels between Italy and China, since it has done the same thing here. In fact, because the characters don't quite understand the source of these abilities, and are just sort of doing strange power thingies, that could be why Helix is interpreting these as a possible glitch. This does raise the question of Arbaz gaining these skills, since he wasn't around the box the same way the others were, but he was around the Koh-i-Noor. Since that is already one of the most versatile pieces of Eden, it's not a stretch to say that could do it too. But then, why would these pieces of Eden only be giving abilities to these select individuals? Why not Nikolai, who lacks the Helix abilities? Or Shay? Or any of the number of other randos who keep possessing these over the centuries? The answer is most likely Juno. Juno has already been playing the long game at this point, as her plan hinged on Desmond succeeding at Minerva and Jupiter's plan 10,000 years down the line. It would be catastrophic for Nikolai to have these skills, because he is the great-grandfather of Daniel Cross, the guy brainwashed by Abstergo to infiltrate and destroy the modern assassins in the lead-up to George W. Bush's Templar election steal in 2000. Nikolai's family keeps getting devastated in ways that, several generations later, caused Daniel's vulnerability to Templar scheming, which directly allowed Abstergo to target Desmond, which kept Juno's plan on track. This wouldn't have happened if Nikolai could turn invisible or insta-kill several dudes back to back. So the only people getting these powers are people that keep Juno's further plans lined up, as we will see in Syndicate next time, and alluded to by the ending here. Jesus Christ, that was so complicated to justify a gameplay mechanic that, more likely, no one had the time to think about because Climax Studios was probably just trying to get these games out to meet Ubisoft's harsh corporate demands. So most of Russia, as mentioned, is Nikolai trying to get Anastasia to safety, because she doesn't deserve anything life has thrown at her by this point. He tries to meet up with his old revolutionary friend Leon Trotsky, but Trotsky betrays him to the Templars. He only cares for the revolution and not for the conspiracy back and forth, and he would rather execute Anastasia as a symbol of destruction of the old system of power. Anastasia has to rescue Nikolai, and the two are ever closer for it. With little other choice, Nikolai brings her along with the box to the Assassin Brotherhood in Moscow. Though they assure him she'll be taken care of, he overhears other assassins discussing the real plan. They are going to study her brain for its newfound precursor connection, a process she is not likely to survive. And though some of the Brotherhood protests it as breaking the tenets of the Creed, ultimately those in charge just don't care. So Nikolai hunts down the secret laboratory, finally turning against them, so he can save... Wait a minute. An older man has to escort a teenage girl through dangerous territories, only to turn on former allies when they plan on dissecting her brain, leading to her death? Spoilers for The Last of Us. But that's just The Last of Us! The Last of Us had barely been out 2 years when this game was in development. Assassin's Creed ripped off The Last of Us. God damn it, Assassin's Creed. So they accidentally fucking explode the lab while escaping. So the assassins send out their assassin tank like it's a goddamn boss fight in Arkham Knight. A tank is also possibly the fastest way to break all 3 tenets of the Creed. Nikolai narrowly stays ahead of it, long enough to be able to get into a sniper versus tank battle, which is admittedly so badass. Nikolai gives Anastasia some fake papers to escape the country so she can live in Germany under the new name Anna Anderson, and they both say goodbye one last time before they flee. This is kind of a weird choice to have picked, and one I'm not exactly fond of. There was a real Anna Anderson who claimed to be Anastasia, having survived her family's execution, but DNA testing and the discovery of the real Anastasia's remains in 2007 disproved these claims. Anna Anderson was just an individual with a history of mental health issues that the media just sort of glommed onto. And it feels a little exploitative to use this as a story beat like this decades later, when we should know better. It's not even well justified in-universe, because this fictional version of Anastasia would already know better than drawing attention to herself, considering that 2 secret conspiracies and the political revolution that just took over her home country all want her dead. So now, it's either implying that in this alternate 20th century history, it never even became a big sensationalist media thing, which would be functionally indistinguishable from just giving her an entirely different name, or the historical details don't change and she would just go on to blow her cover. It doesn't sit well with me either way. The end. Except instead of a post-credits scene, we have a password-protected post-credits scene. Throughout all 3 games, there are codes hidden which can only be seen in Eagle Vision, and putting them in here gives us a scene that justifies the big picture happenings in these games. Letitia England, one of the literal top Templars in the world, has had someone studying Shay's Precursor Box and various memories connected to it, linking this one in as the same Precursor Box in Rogue. And she needs Otso Berg to take it to Dr. Alvaro Grammatica, the scientist mentioned in Unity leading the DNA studies upon the dead sage from Black Flag. This box is going to help them with the mysterious Project Phoenix. Originally, these 3 games were all supposed to come out before Syndicate, and it gives some great connective tissue when discussed in that order, as I have done here, but India and Russia got delayed and only came out after Syndicate. For anyone who plays these in release order and really puts in the effort to do all of this, it's a very anticlimactic scene, considering what we'll be looking at next time. Before I wrap things up for today, I want to just take a moment and thank all of you. I started this video series just over 3 years ago, and in that time it blows my mind just how far we have gotten, and just how much worthwhile feedback I have gotten from you, the viewers. I have learned and improved quite a lot in that time frame, and I couldn't have done it without the support I've seen from you. Again, I thank you all so much. Next time we'll be jumping straight into things with Syndicate, so subscribe if you want to see that. I'll have the playlist available if you want to catch up on anything you've missed, and liking and commenting always gives YouTube the kind of engagement that helps these videos grow. Until next time, this has been a briefish history of Assassin's Creed.